Testing 1 2 3. Testing.
You said you were working on this since you were thinking about it.
I started with
Testing.
You said you were working on this since you were thinking about it.
I started with
You said you were working on this since you were thinking about it.
I started with
You said you were working on this since you were thinking about it.
I started with
You said you were working on this since you were thinking about it.
I started with
Testing 1, 2, 3.
Normally just we're sitting around a table at the Tolkien Society. All right. All right. Welcome to the Tolkien Society monthly meeting and broadcast. Of course, this month we're doing it live from Tolkien Moot X, and so we have a few more in-person participants than usual, and trying to get all the gear arranged because normally we're just a few of us around a table. Go ahead and talk for a second, see if that pops up. Say, Michael Martinez. Hello, Michael. How are you? Are you connected to our attempt at a broadcast at all? But apparently not the one I'm in, huh? Oh my goodness, what the heck? Yeah, because I'm broadcasting one right now, which I joined with the others. Let me try sending another invite. Okay. Thank you for calling to let me know that it wasn't working quite. What? Who? What's it even doing? What's that? When you're in the Hangout, I think you can do a share option maybe. But who else needs to be invited? I can invite them. Is it Johan Olin? Yeah, yeah, I think so. And then Daniel, you know his email or anything? Hoover, Holzman. Got a bunch of Daniel. Okay. How's that spelled? C-L. Oh, C-O. There it is. I got gonna send Daniel. Okay. Sending them the invite as well. Thank you, Greg. And it should be showing up under youtube.com/Middle Earth Radio. That's where it should be coming up. Not right.
Well, I could show my theory that the Middle Earth is the same thing.
Conan.
The Orion Age is coming the barbarian. No, they're both the same. The humanoid, the Orion Age, they're both like opposite views.
Says it's live.
They both feature a hero who
It is that /Middle Earth Radio. It should be.
hang out.
But I don't see anybody else in here.
Third one comes from Gondor. Orion Age, coming in Colonia. They both have dressed with steel warriors who are fierce fighters. The hobbits of Orion Age. Oh yes, they both feature a story where virtually rising after thousands of years gone and they both feature magic items have to be destroyed. Yeah, it's I tell you, it's complete bullshit. It's complete bullshit, of course, but it's be hogwash. So. No, it's just kind of a one.
Is that any better? Testing 1 2. What's that, Michael? It's gone? Oh, Google. Yeah, I'll send it again.
Well, I don't advance the theory with any not serious.
Get that? Okay. Oh, yep, there you are. Michael Martinez is joining. Yay! Welcome, Michael.
Hey, you're going to have to forgive me. I just got some food. So this will be like a Tolkien Moot feast for me.
A little tricky with the audio here.
Okay, I'm going to hang up the phone now.
All right.
Full Star Wars.
Well, Michael joined. That's good.
And I'm going to go mute. I'm going to mute and turn off my camera while I sit here and munch for a few minutes.
Keep talking, Michael. Okay, a little bit of wait. Okay. All right, we'll try once again here. Welcome, Michael. You say hello, Michael. Okay, so again, since now we're spending a lot of time jump right in, you we have our monthly meeting, and thanks to Brian Easlin, basically our secretary, he writes notes and will post on the tolkienscholars.org website. And we're able to review those notes. And usually just reading letters, etc. And letters to our patrons. So the notes from, we didn't have a meeting in July, so that's what I'm here. And we had Chris, Richard, Brian, and myself presenting. Brian read from the notes. Richard read from the Vineyard Tenglar. So what we've been doing is in the Vineyard Tenglar, which is a collected version of we've been doing a word a month from it. For example, we have anatomy.
Clark, can you hear me?
Yes, Michael, we can hear you.
We cannot hear you.
At all? Or just really quiet?
Just really quiet, a lot of hiss.
Okay, is that any better?
That is better.
Okay, I'm going to get an echo loop going here, but maybe if I audio on here. We won't get that annoying echo. Can you still hear me okay?
Not really okay, no.
No, not at all?
No, I can hear you. When you hold the mic up to your mouth, I can hear you better, but it's still very weak.
Okay. Huh. No, it's unfortunately, I think it's the Mac limiting me on the maximum microphone combined with Google Plus. I'm sorry. Crud.
You don't have a larger microphone?
The Mac was not letting me plug it in. Anyway, things are all right. Well, if I'm loud, does that help?
That helps.
Okay, then I'll project my voice loudly and enunciate clearly, so I can be heard to say from the back of the room, yes, I'm eligible for food stamps. All right. So we were reading the notes from the previous month. Richard read from the Vineyard Tenglar, so each month we pick a word in Elvish. Last time it was hen, H-E-N, which means eye. And the month before that was Roma, which means shoulder. So it's interesting because you'll hear about the locations in Middle-earth and all kinds of body parts in them. Yeah, so they tie in. So a connection with Amen-Hen, the seat of seeing, or Henneth Anun, the window of sunset. I look at that. We then discussed how Tolkien's translation of Beowulf had just been published that afternoon, and we spent some time on that and covering some of the review in the New Yorker. Chris read an excerpt from Leaf by Niggle, one of Tolkien's short stories. Let's see, and then there's some excerpts from it. There was once a little man called Niggle who had a long journey to make. He did not want to go. Indeed, the whole idea was distasteful to him. But he could not get out of it. He knew he would have to start sometime, but he did not hurry with his preparations. Niggle was a painter, not a very successful one, partly because he had many other things to do. Many of these things he thought were a nuisance, but he did them fairly well, and he could not get out of them, which in his opinion was far too often. The laws in his country were rather strict. There were other hindrances too. For one thing, he was sometimes just idle and did nothing at all. For another, he was kind-hearted, in a way. You know the sort of kind heart. It made him uncomfortable more often than it made him do anything. And even when he did anything, it did not prevent him from grumbling, losing his temper, and swearing mostly to himself. All the same, it did land him in a good many odd jobs for his neighbor, Mr. Parrish, a man with a lame leg. Occasionally, he even helped other people from farther off if they came and asked him to. Also, now and again, he remembered his number of pictures on hand. Most of them were too large and ambitious for his. Remembered his journey and began to pack a few things in an ineffectual way. At such times, he did not paint very much. He had a number of pictures on hand. Most of them were too large and ambitious for his skill. He was the sort of painter who can paint leaves better than trees. He used to spend a long time on a single leaf, trying to catch its shape and its sheen and the glistening of dewdrops on its edges. Yet he wanted to paint a whole tree, with all of its leaves in the same style and all of them different. And what's significant about that, besides his story, Tolkien regularly throughout his letters talks about niggling away at his works, like the Silmarillion, like the Lord of the Rings for 13 years, because he was so focused on the details that he never could get around to the big picture. And so it tied in beautifully into kind of a story about himself in a way. So let's see. Number 5, Brian was working on a role-playing game module on the Battle of the Five Armies and wondered about the Lonely Mountain, what kind of animals and beasts or foliage would be found in the area, if at all. Then we discussed the desolation of Smog and the blight he caused in the land. What would that look like? Secretary's note. Mount Spokane is almost exactly the same size and shape as Erebor. He had an attached picture. I didn't catch it. I'll have to add that. Tolkien does give some specifics in The Hobbit after all. Number 6. Some discussion of how the Battle of the Five Armies may be done by Jackson and Company on the big screen. Number 7, we read letter 90 and discussed it. And then future letters will be on there. I didn't catch that in the notes. Any quick questions or comments on that so far before we jump into the letters? Michael? Johan? Anyone else?
No comment.
So our last letter was 90. And the next one, and at this point, I believe Christopher Tolkien is he is serving in World War II while they're sending air letters back and forth when they can. So this is the 29th of November, 1944, to Christopher Tolkien. My dearest, here is a small consignment of The Ring, the last 2 chapters that have been written, the end of the 4th book of that great romance, in which you will see that, as is all too easy, I have got the hero into such a fix that not even an author will be able to execute him without labor and difficulty. All the same, I chiefly want to hear what you think. As for a long time now, I have written with you most of mine. I see from my register that I sent 3 chapters off on October 14th and another 2 on October 25th. Those must have been Herbs and Stewed Rabbit, Faramir, and the Forbidden Field. Oh, and the Journey to the Crossroads and the Spirit of the The first lot should have reached you by now. I hope about your birthday. The second should soon come, and I hope this lot will get to you early in the new year. I eagerly await your verdict. Very trying having your chief audience 10,000 miles away, and that's half. More off the Walloping Window Blind. On or off the Walloping Window Blind. Anybody know that reference? Walloping Window Blind. Even more trying for the audience, doubtless, but authors are a hopelessly useless tribe. But 5 and last opens with the ride of Gandalf to Minas Tirith, with which the Palantir, last chapter of Book 3, closed. Some of this is written with breath. Then should follow the raising of the siege of Minas Tirith by the onset of the Riders of Rohan, in which King Theoden falls, the driving back of the enemy by Gandalf and Aragorn to the Black Gate, the parley in which Sauron shows various tokens such as prove that he has captured Frodo. Gandalf refuses to see a horrible dilemma all the same, leads to a visit. Then we shift back to Frodo and is rescued by Sam. From a high place they see all Sauron's vast
Fuck.
reserves loosed through the Black Field, and then hurry on to Mount Doom for the deserted Mordor. With the destruction of the ring, the exact manner of which is not certain, all these last bits were written ages ago, but no longer fit in detail nor in elevation, so the whole thing has become much larger and loftier. Barad-dûr crashes. The forces of Gandalf sweep into Mordor. Frodo and Sam, Frodo and Sam, fighting with the last Nazgul on an island of rocks surrounded by the fire of the erupting Mount Doom, are rescued by Gandalf's people. And then the clearing up of all those loose threads, now needing to build Penny's home. A lot of this work will be done in the final chapter, where Sam is found reading out of an enormous book to his children, and answering all their questions about what happened to everything. That will link up with his discourse on the nature of stories in the script. But the final scene will be the passage of Bilbo and Elrond and Galadriel through the woods of the Shire on their way to the Grey Haven. Frodo will join them and pass over the sea, thinking of the vision he had of a far green country in the house of Tom Elrond. So ends the Middle Age and the dominion of men begins. And Aragorn, far away on the throne of Gondor, labors to bring some order and preserve some memory of old among the welter of men that Sauron had poured into the land. But Elrond has gone, and all the High Elves. What happens to the Ents, I don't know yet. It will probably work out very differently from the plan when it really gets written, as the thing seems to write itself once I get going, as if the truth comes out then, only imperfectly glimpsed in one narrative. All the love of your own time. That's a lot of his process, and where he was trying to go with it, and some of the things that didn't come out quite. Anybody online there have any idea what the walloping window blind is that he's referring to? Anybody online seems to research? No? Okay. Well, so comments, thoughts about this. You guys read the letter, we can talk about the parts that stood out for you. Raise your hand when you have it. Come on, be brave. It's okay. Well, I was thinking of comments as I went through, and I'm raised my hand by standing. Did you notice how he talked about reading the story out of the book?
I did notice that part, and I'm a little disappointed that that didn't make it into the final novel. I guess that would have been a cool scene. Is that in...
They allude to it in Peter Jackson. So they're struggling near the end of Mount Doom. Frodo and Sam talking to each other, trying to get each other to keep going, and they're trying to out-compliment each other on who's more of a hero. But, no, tell me about the brave Sam. He was my favorite, and they kind of allude to it, I think.
Was there a draft of that story in one of the public snippets?
That's a good question. I'd have to flip through. I have one of those resources right here. So Brian, unfortunately, isn't here, and Chris Clifton isn't here, and Richard.
Hawk.
Yes, Michael.
Did you get an answer about the wallowing window blind?
No, not yet. Do you have one?
There's a song.
Okay.
The wallowing window blind. A capital ship for an ocean trip was the wallowing window blind. No wind that blew dismayed her crew or troubled the captain's mind. It's kind of long, but that's probably what he was referring to.
Is that Tolkien, or who wrote that?
Oh, I have no idea who wrote it. It's an old song they used to sing at school.
Oh, really? Oh, interesting. Thank you.
You're welcome. If you could move that microphone up a little bit closer to your mouth, I'm sure a lot of people would be happy.
Did you hear that, Michael? Did you hear him?
No.
The source I got said it was written by Charles E. Carroll.
It's very distorted.
Tristan says that the version, what he says, it was written by Charles E. Carroll.
Oh. Is that related to Lewis Carroll?
I do not know.
Okay.
Oh, Carryl.
Oh,
Okay.
Well, that doesn't necessarily prove it. Someone might have changed the spelling of the name.
Any
probably no connection between the two.
other-
Probably.
Let's. Josh says he bets they were both human. I guess that narrows it down in this manifestation in multiverse.
There you go.
Sons of Adam, as C.S. Lewis put it.
Let's see. It was interesting how he mentioned how he said Gandalf's forces rather than Aragorn's or generally the forces of three peoples or something. I thought that was an interesting phrasing there.
Gandalf stage managed the whole thing.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting that they had pointed out
Oh. Yeah, the final scene will be the passage of Bilbo and Elrond and Galadriel through the woods of the Shire on their way to the Grey Haven. Frodo will join them and pass over the sea, linking with the vision he had of a far green country in the House of Tom Bombadil. Yeah, it does. Yeah, that's interesting. He doesn't mention that. I don't know if that was intentionally submitted or not, but that's a good point.
What was the question?
You notice that Gandalf was not included in that list of people heading over to the west in his summary.
He's the only one on the list who doesn't need healing.
Yeah, from all their wounds, either emotional or physical, indeed. Okay, any other tidbits on that? Michael, did you have any comments?
I've never really paid attention to this letter. It's so short.
Okay, this other one is an even shorter. Oh, yes, go ahead.
I was intrigued by his comment that the story doesn't always go the way he expects it will when he starts writing.
Yeah, that it kind of takes over. The truth will come out as he writes, indeed.
I used to think that was just authors being silly, but then I started trying to write some stuff myself. I found out different.
Yeah, Drake's been discovering that too. The muses have him. They take control. It just flows forth. Any others before I move on to the next letter? I'll have somebody else read the next one. Who wants to read the next one? It's a much shorter one.
From a letter to Christopher Tolkien, 18 December 1944. Your news of yourself does not in some ways add to my equanimity. A dangerous trade, but may God keep you, dear boy. But as you seem to be enjoying part of it more than anything up to now, I take comfort in that. I should feel happier if your time was better organized so that you could get a reasonable rest. Training by straining seems irrational, but I fear an Air Force is fundamentally irrational thing per se. I wish I could wish dearly that you had nothing to do with anything so monstrous. It is, in fact, a sore trial to me that any son of mine should serve this modern mollusk. But such wishes are vain, and it is, I clearly understand, your duty to do well in such service as you have the strength and aptitude to do. In any case, it is only a kind of squeamishness, perhaps, like a man who enjoys steak and kidney, or did, but would not be connected with the butchery business. As long as war is fought with such weapons, and one accepts any profits that may accrue, such as the preservations of one's skin and even quote-unquote victories, it is mere shirking the issue to hold war aircraft in special horror. I do so all the same. This morning I saw CSL for a while. His fourth, or fifth, novel is brewing, and it seems likely to clash with mine, my dimly projected third. I have been getting a lot of new ideas about prehistory lately, via Beowulf and other sources of which I may have written, and want to work them into the long-shelved time travel story I began. CSL is planning a story about the descendants of Seth and Cain, we also begin to consider writing a book in collaboration on language, nature, origins, functions. Would there were time for all these projects.
Katie? Well, that was insight into the relationship between C.S. Lewis and Tolkien at that time. They go through different stages in their relationship, and that was interesting. Yes, well, one of the major conflicts that they argued about outside of the religion aspect, because Tolkien brought C.S. Lewis to Christianity, but then C.S. Lewis chose to be a Protestant rather than Catholic, and that caused a little bit of a rift. But also in the writing, you got something, Josh? Okay. Oh. But also, Tolkien, although he did it sometimes, really didn't like to get too preachy in the writing, and he of course abhorred
Allegory?
allegory. Thank you. And always he wrote over and over, "Oh, I abhor allegory in all its forms." When he was writing about George MacDonald, he's like, ever since I had the wisdom to detect it and such. So then he wrote a whole other story to rewrite the Golden Key of George MacDonald. It was, well, Michael, which story was it that he did the rewrite?
Is that the Moot and Major movie?
I'm drawing a blank here.
It's the one with the cake. And
Smith with Wood and Major.
Smith, yeah, Wooten Major.
Yeah, so he did it as a rewrite. He was asked to do, and we've talked this in some previous meetings with different people here. We were going through some of George MacDonald's stuff because Tolkien wrote that he was inspired by some of George MacDonald's works, so much so that in the 50s or 60s, he was asked to write the foreword for a new publication of MacDonald's works. And he had loved MacDonald in the past, so he went back and reread it, and then found he couldn't stand it. So, A, he couldn't write the foreword, in a positive way, and B, it triggered him to write a whole new story because he thought he could write it better. And so it's funny. And he actually did finish that short story. It was one of his projects he actually finished. Though it was relatively short, and that's probably why he finished it. So C.S. Lewis had lots and lots of allegory in a lot of his works, and they kind of butted heads a little bit over that sometimes. They also, were constantly giving each other feedback and encouragement, and C.S. Lewis was kind of a guerrilla marketer for Tolkien. In letters and in newspapers and editorial comments, he would throw in positive comments anonymously or under surnames or alias names, and so even though after they kind of fell apart, they still cared about each other. And yes,
More of a question, really. Do we know what are the two books? Was it the fourth or fifth C.S. Lewis book? Was he talking about one of the Narnia books?
Let me check here. There is a footnote. So again, normally I've got 2 or 3 other of the Tolkien Society members here helping with this. Okay, Lewis's next published novel after that hideous strength and great divorce was The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Tolkien is, however, almost certainly referring to some other book of Lewis's that was never completed. Tolkien's dimly projected third may have been The Notion Club case. And then the number 2 footnote about the nature, origins, and functions of language says Lewis told Cad Walsh, who visited him in the summer of 1948, that this book was to be called Language and Human Nature and was to be published the following year by the Student Christian Movement Press, but this never happened. In 1950, Lewis wrote to a friend, quote, "My book with Tolkien, any book in collaboration with that great but dilatory and unmethodical man, is dated, I fear, to appear on the Greek calendar." End quote.
Which is to say, never.
Wow. That's interesting. The great but dilatory and unmethodical. So you can see that's another area that probably drove C.S. Lewis nuts Tolkien's niggling away.
It's too bad. I would have liked to have read that book. Read that book.
Do you know when the Greek calends are held?
No.
There are no Greek calends. That's the point.
Other comments on that so far? It's interesting, his comments about the Air Force. Of course, he's been pretty consistent about all forms of war and such ever since he served in the trenches of World War I. Not surprising, he has a strongly negative view about all forms of warfare and the slaughter, and he's really open about how he thinks that the leadership of the military, the generals and such, how horribly inconsiderate and incompetent they are because of the Battle of the Somme. I just watched them just grind people up. He's always been quite vocal about. He's always quite vocal about that. And then mentioning about Beowulf. So this was 1944. When was his Monsters and Critics speech, Michael?
I think 37, 36, 37. I think.
So just continuing to reference that. Oh, and then of course the time travel story. And that's in Lost Tales, right?
You mean Book 5
What's
of
that?
the history? You mean Book 5 of the History of Middle-earth?
Oh, it was a book 5.
Well, there's like 2 time travel stories. You talking about just the Book of Lost? No, I don't think you're talking about the Book of Lost Tales.
Well, he said here, so I've been getting a lot of new ideas about prehistory lately via Beowulf and other sources that I may have written, and want to work them into a long-shelved time travel story I began.
It's not the Book of Lost Tales, because by this point, he'd long since abandoned that. It was no longer in development.
Time travel story.
So, I wasn't... was it the Fall of Anadim?
Everyone had the end of the little earthquake.
Well, no,
the end of the Lord.
The Lost Road. The Lost Road. No. I think it's the Lost Road.
The Lost Road. That's it. That's Book 5. Thank you. Yeah, it's in the Lost Road. And it's like Numenorians had battleships made of steel, and it was a mixture of things. Yeah, it was. And that was published later in its incomplete form. Additional comments? A shorter session. 1:15? Okay, so we'll have 15 minutes left. Let me see. We got comments here online.
Nothing worth reading out loud, Hawk.
Better quality. What's that, Michael?
There's nothing worth reading out loud in the comments.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing derogatory. It's just a little chit-chat. No question. The sound quality on the Hangout is really awful. Okay. It's just a constant stream of hiss on the Hangout.
My lower beard. A little too heavy. My beard's not popping right now.
I think you're just going to have to...
Is that any better on the... Oh, it went back up.
Well, I can hear you better, but the hiss doesn't... There's no fading on the hiss.
What about that?
That's actually worse than whatever you had before you reached down and... You need a graphic equalizer, a sound man, a sound engineer, a producer, and a couple of director assistants.
Yeah, nobody will step up, so...
Who's that in the red shirt? He's expendable.
Miles in the red shirt over there. Oh wait, we also got Connor too. We got 2 red shirts. Woohoo! He's wearing a Dalek shirt, so he might have some protection. So Doctor Who shows up. Do you have any comments there?
I find it to be fascinating. The midst of coming up with a story or have an idea, and lay awake countless hours mulling it over, and you take someone like he would probably never get, or he would spend all.
No idea what's in the pipe. I guarantee you.
Well, but it's interesting because I've totally hypothesized, and I wanted, if I ever had tons of free time, I would go through his letters and any other resources I could find on the times he said he was sick versus times where he was doing intense work and times sick at work. Now, the problem is academia, being a teacher or a student, is inherently manic depressive. It's an extremely up and down experience, a lot of crunch times and then recovery, etc. But he had repeated health issues. He would go through these really intense binges of work, and then he'd tend to sound like he'd collapse a lot, sometimes and not other times. Now, it may have just been he kept working himself to exhaustion, but it was very interesting the other times that he says he couldn't stop working. He would just, his stuff would just take hold of him, whether it was other projects or the Lord of the Rings or whatever, and he'd go through these binges of intense work, and then it would sit idle for long periods of time. I could.
There's no sound. No sound coming for you. I can't hear you.
I accidentally muted him. I don't know how to unmute.
Okay.
Oh
my God.
You
are muted.
Again, Michael, you did this last year.
I was just trying. You've got 2 or 3 feeds there, and I thought, well, maybe the hiss is coming from one of the extra feeds. So,
that is possible. Oh,
again.
It is. Oh, it's the audience microphone that's hissing.
That's much better, man. I didn't realize I could do that for everybody, though.
On when you guys are talking, keep it off otherwise. Okay, well, good. Yes, Daniel, please, you had a comment?
Hello, no comments, just listening, and hi from Brazil.
Welcome, Daniel from Brazil. We appreciate you joining us.
Nice. Brazilian Tolkien Society say hi to you too. I'm the president and founder of Brazilian Tolkien Society, and it's very nice to be with you here.
We're very glad to have you. Thank you for joining us. That's great.
Cool.
And we have Johan over there. Is he still here? Oh, he went over to the YouTube channel. That's right.
Yeah.
From Finland. So we were corrected last session that he is, I think, Swedish ethnic in Finland. That was something.
Wow.
That was clarified. Yes.
They never did get that worked out over the last 1,000 years, did they?
Any other comments on that letter? Nope. Okay. Excuse me.
I'm sorry.
What's that, Daniel?
I'm sorry. You were talking about the letter and the hard work he was doing. He could not give up. He could not stop doing that. I remember I watched it on a TV, a special about Tolkien, and Christopher Tolkien was telling us on that show the same thing. It was like a torture for his father. He couldn't stop. He couldn't stop, no matter what he was trying to do or to attend to another questions. He was always going back to Lord of the Rings and all the history of Middle-earth and Arda and Ea. It's like a torture to his father.
Interesting. That's exactly what Jacob was saying when he's working on creating an adventure, and such for role playing.
Yeah.
And I think Drake too, who's been, finished his first book. He's hoping to get published someday. He would stay up late hours with stuff going through his head when he should be going to sleep. Young man. Drake's my youngest son, by the way.
While you chat, I will try to find this video here at my home, and I will try to broadcast this video here so you can see, you can watch Christopher Tolkien telling exactly these words. Okay? May I find it?
It has to be a really short clip because otherwise this will be taken down for copyright. So.
Okay, cool. Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
But you've
Be right
quoted it
back.
effectively. What's the title of it so people can look it up?
It is, I don't know, here in Brazil they are called Tolkien's life, like a Tolkien biography. There's no
Who
official
produced
title
it?
because the broadcast here, they changed the titles.
Okay. Do you know what year it was originally broadcast?
Maybe 1993 or 1992.
That's
I
the
think you know what
Centennial
year.
biography.
That's great. We appreciate that. So yeah, so definitely look for that. We should include that in the links for this video. After we
Nice.
post the video, that'd be great to add links to that. Yeah,
Nice.
I had one of my videos get pinged just because it, in the background, when Tolkien Moot a year or two ago, you couldn't see the video, but you could hear some of the audio from one of the Peter Jackson movies playing in the background as we were all watching it. And the YouTube took it down because whoever complained. And so we
Really?
go through
Wow.
and edit out that audio
Oh,
just because it was in the background. It wasn't even clear or anything, but so we
okay.
have to be careful about that.
Sure.
So word of the day from Vinyar Tengwar. This is also continuing from #1, September 1988 issue. The folks on the camera.
Nice.
And we have a whole collection of these. And we're
Oh,
still,
wow.
this is our third or fourth word. I mean, so it has a picture of
Oh, awesome.
all the different body parts in Elvish.
Now, how cool is that?
Yeah. And you can get these from the...
That elf is not anatomically correct. I just want to say that.
Elvish.org is where you can potentially buy back issues of these.
From an orc standpoint?
Not in the Elvish Society here, no. So let's see, we already covered doll for head and hen for eye. Let's see, how about, we did Roma for shoulder. I'm looking for something that ties in with other stuff. Okay, how about heart? It's either hon, H-O-N, it's a long O, or
Hon.
ore, with the E with the 2 double dots over it. What's the name of those double dots? Because it's not an umlaut.
But
double
can you
dot
repeat can you repeat the second?
O-R-E with the 2 double dots over the E.
Okay.
Ore.
Ore.
So that means heart. So it's either hon or ore.
But the difference is between Sindarin and Quenya or not?
This is probably Quenya.
I think Hore is Quenya and Sindarin is Hon.
Let's see. Yeah, that's a good question. You're probably right. It's probably the version. Although most of them, they don't list...
The microphone.
Thank you. Most of them, they don't list 2 languages, just the one.
Yeah.
I would have to look it up in a dictionary.
I think the second one is Quenya, and the first one, Hon, is
Cover art
Sindarin.
by Tom Loback, chart of body parts in Quenya and Quenya.
Okay, Quenya.
That's a typo. Same picture appeared in Parma, El de Lambaron, #7, page 27, except that the Elvish names were in the Tengwar. Here on the cover of Vinyar Tengwar, it's represented in our own alphabet and additionally in our own language, and for the benefit of the Elvish illiterate, of which the editor is one.
Okay. Well.
I just know the elf is not anatomically correct.
Indeed.
Really?
So let's see. About right. Yep, we're just about ready. Any more questions, comments?
What is the first word in the second sentence on page 10?
Give it to Michael, be a smart aleck.
You don't get the reference, do you?
Michael, I miss our shows together. They were
when we used to play computer games in the 80s, that's how you got into the game.
That was the code.
Yeah.
That's right. That was how they verified you owned the book. That's right. Very cool. Well, so we're doing a short session because of the Tolkien Society. Everybody wants to get back to gaming and lunch and all of that. So we're only doing 1 hour this time. We normally do 2 hours from 12:30 to 2:30 p.m. Pacific time. We're going to go ahead and wrap this up here shortly.
Well, hello to everybody in Spokane.
Yep, here in Spokane.
I'm glad to see you didn't burn down with all those fires in Washington.
Yeah, it's been and two really nasty windstorms that just leveled the trees. Yeah. He has one in his backyard. I had one snap in half as well last weekend. Flattened.
Well, can I just get in one quick thing?
Oh yes, Michael, please.
Have you heard about this this guy on Tickled that came up with this theory about how Gandalf was in secret collusion with the Eagles to destroy the One Ring?
On where?
Tickled. It's Tickled. Yeah, so you haven't seen it? The theory about Gandalf and the Eagles? Gandalf?
Really?
Well, now you have something to look forward to.
Eagles plot hole in the Lord
Yeah,
of
the
Rings,
Eagles
is that the
plot
one you're
hole.
referring to?
Yeah.
Where he was secretly keeping it completely to himself, and that he went to see Saruman to get counsel, and then he needed to be rescued by the Eagles. Then he wanted to take one of the passes that made it straight to the Eagles, so that he could fly straight there. But when he ended up battling the Balrog as he's getting ready to fall, he says, "Fly, you fools," because he didn't want any plan at all to get out. So that was what he said as he was falling.
That was a secret code. You would be amazed at how many people have been repeating this thing.
About his plan to take the Eagles to Mount Doom.
Traffic to my website exploded like 2 days after I first heard about this thing. The first time I saw it, I thought, well, that's a joke. That's a nice joke. You know, he's making up all this stuff. And then it just went nuts. It went viral on the internet, and people were just convinced that this must be really what was going on in the story. So, I just thought that we should get that onto the video for Tolkien Moot.
Yeah.
What?
What's that?
I was just saying.
I just get on the video on Tolkien Moot.
Yeah, I just thought we should make a record of it. You know, that have your Tolkien Moot acknowledge it.
Yeah, great. All right. Any last comments, questions before we wrap up? All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Our next session is typically the second Saturday of each month, and from 12:30 p.m. to 2:30 p.m. Pacific, as I stated before. TolkienScholars.org, all one word. TolkienScholars.org. For the convention at Tolkien Moot, this is Tolkien Moot number 10. It's TolkienMoot.org, and of course we're on Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, Tumblr, Reddit, Google+.
There you go.
Trying to stay on top of all of them. And then of course our own IRC servers, which I'm afraid I did a poor job of staying on top of this time since I didn't have anybody else from the usual group. Make sure. See if I missed anybody in there before I wrap up. Okay. Ardemir ordering a complete set of Vinyar Tengwar. Had some of the issues, but want to have a complete set. So that's great that the website has that. All right. We'll go wrap it up. Let everybody do lunch and gaming. Thank you, everybody who attended the meeting and for here at Tolkien Moot. Of course, Tolkien Moot's continuing on the rest of tonight and into
have fun storming the castle.
Woohoo! Storm the castle. Thank you, everybody.
Nice to see you guys.
Bye.
Nice to see you guys.
I'm going now.
Thanks, Michael and Daniel. Thank you so much, and thank you, Johan.
Thank you. Goodbye. Nice to see you. To the next.